Before we get to each of your example trades, we've got to get your thoughts on Nvidia. Kevin, I'll start with you, your take.
I think there's new energy in this stock after, frankly, 2 straight earnings reports that once the news was out, there was pretty lackluster price action. Now he goes on stage in Taiwan and kind of re-energizes everything, bringing out this new CPU. He's also, that's not all he talked about there. He talked about robotaxi. He talked about robotics. He talked about all these other things. He talked about software and how it's going to be. Think about this. Here's the way he put it that is very brilliant. He said, and it goes back to software engineers, he said, since AI is going to so greatly increase the return on investment for a software engineer, that you actually may hire more because of the good investment that they become. So this new chip that is going to greatly compete. You see it in the stock action. Nvidia up, Intel and AMD down. I think this puts a whole new ball game going on with CPUs and PCs and everything. I just think it puts a whole new level of energy under Nvidia stock, Diane, Tom.
Tom, your thoughts on Nvidia?
Yeah, I mean, you take a look at the resurgence that we've seen in the CPU market, and that's why you're seeing those massive rallies in Intel, AMD. That x86 architecture that Intel kind of started out and AMD's been taking market share is the demand side of this. And now all these partnerships that they have, including with Microsoft, Jensen Huang said he's going to come out and, they're basically coming out and reinventing the PC, reinventing the laptop. This is the biggest change as far as hardware technology that they're going to see since the addition of the smartphone years ago. So, yeah, a lot of adjectives thrown out there that revolutionizing maybe the tech space in this in this world, but at the same time, Kevin mentioned it earlier. If you start getting Nvidia into portions of your business, and that's why you're seeing the weakness in Intel, Qualcomm, AMD. You start getting Nvidia in there, and maybe they innovate quicker than them, and they play catch up with them, and then they partnership with Microsoft, with Lenovo, with ASUS, and some of the others in the hardware making segment of the business. Yeah, it kind of makes sense at this point because CPU prices have rallied so significantly over the past 6 to 9 months or so. So this makes complete sense. They're going to use that ARM architecture. We talked about that before. That's going to help that company. But yeah, this is just another step in the evolution of what Jensen Huang's trying to do with this company and have their foot into every aspect of not only the AI infrastructure build out, but as Kevin mentioned, humanoid robots, robo-taxis, everything at this point. And that's probably a benefit for Nvidia. You're seeing the reaction in the shares up over 4%. And we're still not back to all-time highs yet either, guys, especially after that earnings event where they grew revenue 87%, data center revenue grew 77%, another blowout quarter, another beat and raise quarter. And now, we're starting to see investors wake up to Nvidia.
Apparently, we're just going to have agents do everything, which who knows? At some point, this may actually happen. But, Jensen Huang has a great ability to talk about the future of AI and all the things it's going to do. And right now in the market mindset, any happy talk about AI creates an automatic rally. And the reveal of the chip that's going to go into laptops and potentially change laptops forever has now got a whole bunch of stocks rallying, including Nvidia. And so here we go again. Now, geopolitical headlines have turned a bit sour here in the last 10 minutes, but the AI enthusiasm that's carrying this market, it is alive and well. If you whisper AI, it seems like your stock's going to go up 10%, and the gains are simply jaw-dropping, as are, by the way, the earnings increases for a lot of these companies. I mean, this is not just hype. These companies are making mountains of money.
But Tom, really, one of the stocks up this morning is ServiceNow. This company was left for dead for the better part of a year. I mean, the stock was absolutely smashed. You mean to tell me ServiceNow is worth 10% more today than it was at the closing bell on Friday?
No, right? I mean, it is because people are going to chase it. But you're absolutely right, Brian. I mean, the moves in these stocks have really got to give people a bit of pause because, again, I get it. Nvidia announced a chip that could revolutionize the laptop. Okay, well that's amazing. When it comes out, I'm sure it'll be awesome. I don't know why that all of a sudden results in service now being bid up and everybody rushing into it. There's so much money pouring into this trade. It's just looking for a home. So any sort of positive headline, any sort of positive inference is causing that ocean of money chasing this trade to go to every single corner. It's like a spill going to every nook in the room. Yeah, and that's exactly what's happening. And we're getting this constant drip of positive AI news, and it's keeping the money flowing.
To the trade examples, Kevin, let's start out with yours. What's your approach today?
Okay, what I wanted to look at was a way to be bullish and give yourself time, right? I think with some IPOs coming up, you never know what the price action is going to be. People could be raising capital on such a large cap tech name, such a widely held name. So what I want to do, I want to be able to let these IPOs happen and then let this play out over a long period of time. So I went out to the July 17th expiration. I gave myself a month and a half for this to happen, Diane, and I bought first thing I did, I used the right-hand column of the Thinkorswim platform to look at the expected move out to July 17th, right around $29.50. Let's round it to 30. And so what I looked at was an unbalanced butterfly buying the 220, selling the 250. In line with that expected move on the right-hand column of the platform. And then to finish the unbalanced butterfly, I sold the 250, 260 call vertical. And so I've got an unbalanced butterfly, and I'm long a $30 strike, short a $10 strike. I put that in around $7.85, maybe trading a dime more than that now, but it can max out at around, what's $30 minus 8? Around $22. And so, Tom, this is one of those, gives you time, gives you a month and a half, has an upside posture to it. But if Nvidia were to blow through 250 and head towards 260 and higher, you don't lose your profitability on this butterfly, something that often frustrates investors in butterflies.
Yep. Yeah, let's take a look at this and break this one down because it's a longer term call butterfly that's bullish on this example trade as we've got 46 days until July expiration on this butterfly. So let's break it down. Buying one of the July 17th monthly, the 220 strike calls, sell two of the 250 calls, that's where you want it to go, and then buy one of the 260 calls. So in essence, you're buying a $30 wide bullish call vertical and selling a $10 wide call vertical to create this unbalanced call butterfly to the upside. You're paying roughly about a $7.85 debit. So there's your risk, $785 per spread. You can see there the break even goes to $227.85 to the upside. That's basically about $6, $7 above the current share price. So on a percentage basis over the next 46 days, you don't need a big, massive move to the upside on this one. You do want it to kind of grind higher towards that 250 strike. But as Kevin mentioned, even if this thing blows through, goes to new all-time highs, goes through 260, it's still more than a double in profitability on this particular trade. So yeah, looking for giving yourself some upside exposure, offsetting some of the costs by doing the unbalanced call butterfly as opposed to just buying maybe the 220, 250 call vertical on this. By turning it into a butterfly, you offset some of the costs on that. But you definitely need a move to the upside. But hey, you've got 46 days in a slow grinder. If it goes back above all-time highs of about 236 and starts creeping towards 250, that's the idea on this. But anything above that break even at 227.85 is going to be potential profitability on this trade. Now, Kevin, I flipped the script on this one a little bit. Not really a massively bearish type of position if you think maybe this stock's going to top out, maybe it's going to go a little bit lower. But I looked at a different strategy that we typically don't talk about on the show. We talk about iron condors, but not an equidistance condor that I looked at. And this is on the put side and really short-term positioning on this one. I went out to the June 12th weekly cycle. So just about a week and a half in this particular trade, 11 days, where I'm going to buy one of the 220 strike puts. It's basically at the money. The stock has moved a little bit higher. Buy one of the 220 puts, sell one of the 215 puts, sell one of the 210 puts, and then buy one of the 205 puts. So $5 wide bearish put condor, paying roughly about $1.25 debit on this trade. It's probably going to be a little bit less than that because the stock has moved a little bit lower. Probably trading about 115. But that debit you pay on this is going to be your risk. So if you pay $1.25, $125 per spread, you can see from this risk profile that it apexes out between that 215 and 210 strike that you sold. You sold each one of those on this trade. And your break evens on this one, where you want it to kind of settle in, is between 206 and 206.25 to the downside and 218.75 to the downside. So, Kevin, when you look at this, yeah, you've got two break evens, right? But the risk you pay is going to, the debit you pay is going to be your risk on this trade. You just think maybe it's going to grind a little bit lower. You've only got 11 days in this position, so it's really short-term bearish outlook. You just don't want it to kind of go higher, and you don't want it to just fall out of bed and go back below the 206 level.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting discussion topic here because really, if you think about it, the condor and the butterfly are really in the same family because though an iron condor is a short call, short put, you're long a put vertical and short a put vertical, much like the butterfly is, except your short strikes are not the same. You're giving yourself an area where you can be profitable. And this, it's between the 215 and the 205 level on the downside. So these trades, though they look different, are actually very similar in how they do because you're long a put vertical in times and short a put vertical. I'm long a call vertical and short a call vertical. You both have targets on where your short strikes, but Tom has more of a range target where mine is more specific, Diane. It's a great way to look at these types of trades where you're buying one spread, selling.
So, John, your view is you can see at this point some angst in the market. Just you have to look closely. In other words, the tech and the AI trade continues unabated. That's why we keep hitting new highs. But when things were calmer, the cyclical trade was doing well, and that has been stalled.
That's sort of my read. We've been in this dual track market since the start of the year. We entered the year, the cyclical trade was kind of in full force. You had bottoming and rebounding U.S. economic data, prospects for stimulus, and a lot of positive developments helping boost cyclical stocks. And then at the same time, you had this completely separate thing happening in the AI space with agents and the arrival of agentic AI. And, the Iran conflict, I think, has sort of derailed the first trade, while the second trade, the AI trade, has picked up steam.
So it sort of went into the next gear with maybe some Jensen Huang comments that the future is now, or at least closer than it was.
I think it's gone into the next gear really in conjunction with some of what we've been learning about Anthropic and OpenAI's businesses. Entering the year, these were big businesses growing really fast. They are now enormous businesses. I think if you take the revenue basis for both those companies combined, we're talking well north of $50 billion of annualized revenues today, way more than doubled since the start of the year. So these are suddenly massive businesses, and it sort of proves to the market or shows the market that this concept of agents is more than a concept now. It's real, it's happening, and it has significant traction.
You probably love what happens to stocks like Micron and some of these. They're on a stilt, a lot of them. Some people are worried. Are you worried?
Well, I think every stock is different. Every subsector is different. I I love what happens to stocks that I own that are going up a lot.
Right.
Stocks I don't own is a harder calculus. But something like memory, I mean, memory is an area that is clearly benefiting from agentic AI. I think agents are always on. They're long running. They require a lot of memory. A stock like Micron, the move there has really been explained fully by earnings growth, and so that's an encouraging thing. It's not a stock that's seen its multiple massively expand since the start of the year, and I think by and large, I mean, there are instances where we've seen big multiple expansion, but by and large, a lot of the move in these tech stocks has been driven by earnings, and so that's obviously a positive relative to the alternate case where it's being driven by multiple expansion.
I'm looking at in your holdings in Gabelli Growth, Nvidia, Alphabet, Amazon, Broadcom, Meta, Microsoft, Eli Lilly. You got everything, and then you got the fat drug company in there as well. So that's like that fits it. It's like AI.
I think one thing I'm trying to do now is it feels like a market where AI is in some cases the only thing that's working, and so I'm trying to find other ideas that can work separate from AI, because as exciting as the AI story is, and as much as I still believe it has room to run, I want some diversification, I want some balance in the portfolios, and so something like Eli Lilly, you have the new oral molecule orforglipron, which recently got FDA approval, and they're now selling the pill Foundayo. I think that could be a big unlock for that company here. And I think that's still an interesting story, and that class of drugs still has a big market to tap into.
Hey, John, question on that front. Do you think that cannibalizes the sales from the injectable or just adds to it?
Yeah, so, it's still early to say, but what we've seen from Novo Nordisk's oral Wegovy, which was the first pill on the market, most of the data there suggests that orals are incremental to the market. I think at the very least, orals should tap into a new market segment. Maybe they can be used for maintenance for patients that start on an injectable, want to keep the weight off, maybe switch to orals. So I think there's inevitably going to be some cannibalization, but for the most part, I do think orals are going to be incremental, and I could see these drugs just massively expanding the market. The orals, that is, people who maybe don't want something as powerful as an injectable, who are taking small amounts or trace amounts of an oral.